who was smarter than Einstein, could do mental math faster than any computer of his time, memorized entire pages of the phone book, and without whom there might not even be smartphones or artificial intelligence? That's right, it's John von Neumann. It might sound unbelievable, but without John von Neumann, a man who, by the way, is not nearly as celebrated in Hungary as he deserves to be, computer science simply wouldn't be where it is today. He came up with fundamental ideas that forever changed the history of computing. There are even legends about his genius. In this video, I'll tell you how a prodigy from Budapest's Vasari High School went on to lay the foundations for how modern computers work. If you're curious about how John von Neumann is connected to the birth of the very first computers, stay with me until the end, I promise. The next time you take your phone out of your pocket, you'll see it in a whole new light. First chapter, the childhood of a prodigy, the Budapest boy whose talent left adults in awe. Imagine this, his family and teachers were already calling him a child prodigy before he even turned 10. He could perform mental calculations so complex that grown-ups were left speechless. According to family stories, he multiplied huge numbers in his head just for fun, or solved the hardest puzzles in seconds. In 1913, his parents enrolled him at the famous Vasari Lutheran High School, the same elite genius factory where Eugene Wigner, later a Nobel laureate, also studied. Both of them were taught mathematics by the legendary Laszlo Ratz. Just picture that classroom. Every desk had a future genius sitting in it. Even as a high schooler, Neumann stood out from his peers. At 17, while others were rehearsing for graduation, he was already publishing mathematical papers in respected journals. As a child, his memory was so photographic, he could recite entire pages of the phone book from memory. After high school, of course, he graduated with top marks. He wanted to be a mathematician, but like many parents, his father wanted a more secure career for him. They settled on a compromise. He would study chemical engineering in Berlin, but his love for mathematics never left him. Even in Berlin and Zurich, he attended math lectures just for fun. He simply could not let go of his passion for numbers. Second chapter, Journey to America, his studies and career. At his father's request, John von Neumann trained as a chemical engineer, but he secretly devoted himself to mathematics. In 1926, he earned his doctorate in mathematics in Budapest with highest honors. By then, he had already achieved significant results in set theory. Word of his genius spread quickly. He first worked as a private lecturer in Berlin, and in 1930, he was invited to Princeton University as a visiting professor. It was there that he adopted the name John von Neumann, which would become known all over the world. At Princeton, he became one of the founding members of the Institute for Advanced Study, working alongside luminaries like Albert Einstein and Theodor von Kármán. Can you imagine the intellectual energy in that place? In the 1930s, Neumann's interest went beyond pure theory. He was fascinated by practical applications of mathematics. Together with friends like Eugene Wigner and Leo Szilard, he was always thinking about how mathematics could be used to solve real-world problems. By the way, game theory, which today is fundamental in economics and artificial intelligence, also bears Neumann's name. Then came World War II, and everything changed. America mobilized its scientists, and Neumann quickly joined in. At the Los Alamos laboratory, he worked on the Manhattan Project to develop the first atomic bomb. There he encountered a problem that ultimately led him toward computers. By hand, the equations had simply become too complex to solve. A new tool was needed, a faster brain capable of handling these complicated calculations. At the time, there were already calculators and enormous electronic machines, but these were not true programmable computers. It was John von Neumann who dreamed up the idea of teaching a machine to remember what it was supposed to do. That's how the modern computer as we know it was born. Third chapter, the dawn of the electronic computer. One of the unexpected products of the war was the world's first electronic computer, the ENIAC. Picture a machine that filled an entire room, weighed 30 tons, and glowed with the light of 18,000 vacuum tubes. It wasn't just huge, it used massive amounts of electricity and got so hot that it needed its own cooling system. Around the same time, early computers like the British Colossus were also built, but it was the Neumann principles that sparked the true revolution of programmable general-purpose computers. Fun fact, Neumann's later wife, Clara Dan, was one of ENIAC's original programmers. ENIAC was completed in 1945, mainly for military use. As revolutionary as it was, and it calculated at speeds never seen before, it was missing one key thing: Flexibility. Programming ENIAC meant physically rerouting hundreds of cables and switches. Imagine having to take apart your phone every time you wanted to install a new app. Neumann was fascinated by ENIAC, but he immediately saw its flaws. What the world needed was a machine that could be easily reprogrammed. No more rewiring, just load in a new program. That's when he began developing his own groundbreaking idea. Fourth chapter, the birth of the Neumann principles. The moment everything changed. Here comes the true turning point of the story. John von Neumann realized that a computer shouldn't just store data, but also the program itself, right in its memory. This is called the stored program concept, and it's the heart of modern computing. What does this mean in practice? You don't need to physically rebuild the machine for every new task. Just load a new program into memory. Today, this seems obvious, but at the time, it was a radical breakthrough. Neumann described exactly how a truly smart computer should work. What does that look like in real life? The machine should be fully electronic. Back then, these giants still ran on vacuum tubes. Today, we use microchips, but the core idea remains. Everything should be based on the binary system, only zeros and ones, making computers simpler and more reliable. There needs to be a central brain, or control unit, what we now call the processor, or CPU. It directs everything and carries out instructions. It's essential to have internal memory, not just for data but for the program itself. This is what makes a computer truly flexible. You need input and output devices, like a keyboard to enter data or a printer to get your results. And finally, the computer must execute instructions one by one, in sequence, not all at once. Neumann wrote all this down at Princeton in 1945 in the design documents for the EDVAC computer. That document is often called the birth certificate of the modern computer. Fifth chapter, building the EDVAC. The Neumann principles come to life. The next big milestone was the construction of the EDVAC, the world's first computer that stored its program in memory, the first real Neumann architecture computer. Building it took years, and it finally launched in 1951. Meanwhile, Neumann's ideas were spreading around the world. In England, the EDSAC was built. In America, the ENIAC one. And at Princeton, they built a machine called the IAS, which became the ancestor of many later computers. According to legend, John von Neumann personally tested the first stored program computer, even racing it in his head. And for certain tasks, he could still keep up. But the key point is this: every modern computer today can trace its roots back to these Neumann architecture machines. Sixth chapter, the information revolution. A Hungarian idea conquers the world. Starting in the 1950s, the real digital revolution began. Transistors, microchips, and then the tiny devices we use today, all of them follow the logic of the Neumann architecture. That same logic is in your laptop, your smartphone, and even in the computers that helped NASA land on the moon. Without John von Neumann's ideas, the digital world might look completely different today. His breakthrough paved the way for software, operating systems, programming languages, basically everything that surrounds us in the world of information technology. Whether you're chatting with artificial intelligence or downloading a new app to your phone, it all builds on the foundations laid by John von Neumann. Seventh chapter, the man behind the genius, Neumann's personality and legacy. But what was John von Neumann like as a person? He probably wasn't what you're imagining right now. He was far from a dry academic. He was lively, loved good food and drink, and his friends said he had a brilliant sense of humor. He was always impeccably dressed. He even went hiking in the Grand Canyon in a three-piece suit. Genius as he was also famously absent-minded. People say he would sometimes forget where he'd left his keys while modeling atomic bombs in his head. His legendary skills in mental calculation and memory became famous. He could recite entire pages of the phone book from memory, quote classical literature in several languages, and would even challenge early computers to mental races, sometimes beating them at their own game. Why did I say at the beginning of the video that Neumann might have been even smarter than Einstein? Just listen to how his friend and colleague, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Eugene Wigner, himself one of the greatest minds of the 20th century, remembered him.
Ő egy évvel hátrább volt, mint én, osztály szerint, de 3 évvel előttem volt a matematika tudásában. Sok embert ismertem az életemben, nagyon sok embert. Einsteint ismertem, Planckot, Lauert, Dirac, a sógorom és a Heisenberg jó barátom. Nem ismerek senkit, aki oly gyors, oly éles eszű lett volna, mint a Neumann János.
He was already widely respected in his lifetime. He became a member of the American Atomic Energy Commission, president of the American Mathematical Society, and even received an award from President Truman. Sadly, Neumann died in 1957 at only 53 years old, but his legacy lives on. Schools, awards, and societies around the world bear his name, and every modern computer still follows the logic he invented. So, that was the story of John von Neumann and the birth of the modern computer. I hope you can feel the impact one Hungarian genius had on the world. Next time you pick up your phone or turn on your laptop, remember, these devices all started as the dream of a brilliant kid from Budapest. Neumann's story shows that a single Hungarian mind can change the world. Who knows? Maybe the next revolutionary idea is inside you. We really do have a lot to be proud of. Hungarian history is full of remarkable people, like John von Neumann or István Széchenyi, who I talked about in my previous video. If you haven't seen that one yet, make sure to check it out.